Hey everybody, today we're going to wrap up our personality unit with discussing our fourth and final theory on personality. So let's quickly review the other three. First, we've got Freud's psychoanalytic perspective, and this also includes his neo-Freudians, so Jung, Adler, Horney, and Erik Erikson. And in this theory, they emphasize the power of the unconscious on our personality. They say it develops through the psychosexual stages, and we assess someone's personality with projective tests. The weakness of this theory is that it's not super scientific. And then we get the positive humanistic perspective that developed in the 1960s with Maslow and Rogers, who say that our personality is all about self-actualization, and it develops through genuineness, acceptance, and empathy. And if we're provided those three things, then our personality is able to grow to its fullest potential. And it's important that acceptance is unconditional positive regard, not conditional acceptance. And they assess this personality through the self-concept, which is the difference between your perceived self and your ideal self. Again, criticisms of this theory is that it's not super scientific. And then the third theory that we just did was the trait perspective, which was coined by Gordon Allport. And he doesn't care why you have your personality. He just wants to describe and label your personality. He says that we have personality traits which are enduring and stable and are genetic. We can be biologically predisposed to certain personality traits over time. He said that you assess this through empirically derived tests that are self-reported. So there is science in this theory, and those are tests through like the Eysenck's introverted extroverted or stable unstable, the big five, CANOE, so conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion, or the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, which is the most widely given personality test. Criticisms of the trait perspective is that it neglects the person-situation controversy, which means that we have these enduring, stable personality traits throughout our lives, but given the right situation, we might act completely different from our enduring personality traits. So finally, we're going to get to the last theory, which is the social cognitive perspective on personality. So the psychologist that you want to know for this theory is Albert Bandura, and hopefully his name sounds familiar because he was who we talked about when we learned about observational learning, because he did the infamous Bobo doll experiment. So he's a behaviorist, so he is really all about how our environment shapes us. And so his theory is that personality is not an enduring thing. It is something that changes depending on the situation that we're in, and our environment can impact our personality, and our personality can impact our environment. So if you change someone's environment, you're going to change their personality. For example, if you have this big lineman that plays in the NFL, he's going to act in a very specific way on the football field. He's going to have a very specific personality. But then if you ask that same lineman to join Dancing with the Stars, then his personality is going to become completely different because you've changed the situation. So Bandura said that there are three things that impact our personality, and they are our cognitive predispositions, so our beliefs and feelings about something. So this is why it's not like super behaviorist, because remember, they don't include cognition in anything, but he's including it here. Our environment, so our social influences, our family, the media we choose to watch. Again, he's the Bobo doll experiment, so he believes that watching things really does influence our behavior. And then finally, our behaviors, our outward actions that we do can influence our beliefs and can influence our environment. And this whole process is called reciprocal determinism. This is the most important term for this theory. It'll definitely be on my test and most likely on the AP test. So you want to make sure that you understand this term. And reciprocal determinism is just how all three of these things, traits, which is the cognition, behaviors, and environment, impact and influence each other to influence our personality. And it's kind of a confusing term, so I want to give you some examples as to how this would be applicable in real life. So let's pretend we have this girl who has an interest in playing volleyball. She's not 100% sure if she loves it, but she thinks she might have an interest in it. So this is her cognitive beliefs. And so because of her interest in playing volleyball, she decides to join a volleyball team, which is now her environment. And because she's in this environment often, she meets volleyball players, and she now starts to spend a lot of time with volleyball players. So her behavior is she starts to hang out with these people after practice. She might hang out with them on the weekends, and that behavior is reinforced. Let's say that it's a positive experience. She gets to be really good friends with these girls, and so her interest in volleyball grows, which changes her cognition even more. And then she decides, because her interest in volleyball is now more intense and she really loves it, that she's going to join a different volleyball team. and that's going to be a different environment, which is going to produce different behaviors associated with it. Maybe this team is more serious, and so she behaves differently on the volleyball court than she did on her last team because of the expectations of this team. So all these things impact each other. It could even start over here. Let's say she doesn't even like volleyball. Her parents are just forcing her to do something. So it starts over here. Step one is she joins a volleyball team. That puts her in an environment in which she now spends a lot of time with volleyball players because she's around them. And she has that positive experience. It's reinforced. And so then she learns to like volleyball. She now has a change in cognition about how volleyball is. And then we could also go the other way. This is why it's called reciprocal determinism, because it works in both ways. Maybe she has an interest in playing volleyball, and so that leads her to do a specific behavior, which is practice volleyball. And because she has practiced volleyball, now she makes the volleyball team. And when she makes the volleyball team, now she has greater interest in playing volleyball. So that's just a simple example to try and show you how these three things, cognition, environment, and behaviors, impact us. Let's try another example. Okay, so let's say we have a girl again, and she's introverted. So that's her cognitive disposition. And because she's introverted, she spends a lot of time alone. That's her behavior. And because she spends a lot of time alone, she doesn't really get invited to social gatherings. Nobody invites her to hang out. Nobody invites her to parties. Nobody invites her to do anything because she spends time alone. And so because she doesn't get invited to social gatherings, which is environmental, then she becomes even more introverted and even more withdrawn in social situations. So again, all three of these are impacting each other. You could do this the exact opposite. Maybe someone's really extroverted, and so their behavior is they spend a ton of time with people all the time. They're really friendly, they're really outgoing, and because of this, they get invited to everything. And because they get invited to everything, they commit to certain things, which is behaviors, and then they become even more extroverted because they're around even more people because they've chosen to put themselves in certain environments. Okay, we got our girl again, and our girl lives in a noisy home, which is her environment. And that noisy home means that she's not going to study. She chooses not to study because it's really hard for her to study. So she gets bad grades on tests because she doesn't study. So now she starts to believe that she's not smart because she doesn't get good grades on tests. Well, let's say she decides to take the ACT. So that's her environment. She gets in the environment of the big testing room. And then she relies on her beliefs of I'm not smart. And therefore, she doesn't try on the ACT because she doesn't believe that she is not smart. So that's her behavior. And then because she doesn't try on the ACT, she gets a really, really, really low score because she didn't answer like any questions. And so because she does that, then that influences her environment. She can't get in any college she wants to get into because she's got a single-digit ACT score or something. And so that influences the environment that she's in. And so again, all these things are playing in together to influence personality. So how does the social cognitive theory assess personality? Well, because of the power of the environment, they think that you should put people in realistic situations in order to assess their personality. And so you might give them something like an internship. You know, Bandura is not going to say, don't give them a personality test. Don't give them a self-reported Myers-Briggs or MMPI or Big Five trait theory. That's not going to tell you anything. Put them in an internship or make them do an audition. Put them in the actual situation to see if they're going to fit with the job. And so again, just to summarize, the core idea of the social cognitive perspective is that we are both the creators and the products of the situations that we surround ourselves with. So our internal disposition, our interests, our intrinsic things that we love to do shape our environment, but then once we put ourselves in that environment shapes our personality and can change our personality because we put ourselves in that environment. And this is all called reciprocal determinism. So I will see you in class in which we will review all four of these theories.